Travel draws here, time to let it flow. We'll sketch and laugh, won't you come along? With every stroke we'll sing our song. Travel draw, let your imagination soar. Travel draw, bring art to every door. No need to be perfect, just have some fun. Travel draw for everyone. From silly doodles to masterpieces bright, we'll make something special day and night. Colors explode with each new design. In Travel draw, it's always fine. Travel draw, let your imagination soar. Travel draw, bring art to every door. No need to be perfect, just have some fun. Travel draw for everyone. So grab a brush or a pen or a crayon. Make a mark any way you can. In this world of shapes and lines, we'll see creativity shine. Travel draw, let your imagination soar. Travel draw, bring art to every door. No need to be perfect, just have some fun. Travel draw for everyone.
And we are live. Welcome everybody joining in tonight as we chat about Assassin's Creed Shadows as it's coming out. We will be talking about a couple things. I do want to state the reviews are officially out now. And of course, no surprise to people, the gaming review companies are all giving it praise and high stars and recommend. Do not believe what's going to happen. It's likely there will not be as many people buying into the game this time, especially of Asian culture, because, well, this is very offensive to Asian culture. It really is. You're kind of ignoring history, and we will be talking about that today as we go about doing our art. So the thing we're going to be talking mainly about is Yasuke, but we will also be talking about the concept of the ninja and the concept of the sumo wrestler in the game. So the two main characters that you play in the game are Yasuke, who they claim is the first black samurai. We will be showing you history and where people have deviated from history to create that myth. For people to know, Yasuke was never a samurai, and that's one thing important to note. People might be like, oh, well, you know, you're splitting hairs. It may be even worse. He may not have even existed. A lot of people have issue with this, especially when Assassin's Creed came on. It came after the Netflix anime that no one really watched. So we need to kind of knock down the concept of Yasuke. And it's been a myth, it's been a legend that people don't really understand why it's a myth and legend. So, we're talking about the period of Oda Nobunaga. So, we're talking right at the turn of the 1600s. Pretty much, let's see here, I'm trying to make sure I'm stating this right. Let's start with my expertise on this. So I've done years of history and research into Japanese legend and lore, because I try to blend it in with my comic series, Demon Blade. Particularly in the days of, well, the ruling of the samurai shoguns. So Oda Nobunaga is before the Shogun period. So we're talking up here, but it's talking a pinnacle moment in, he's kind of the first Shogun. but he's kind of one that introduced the concept of Shogun. So let's see here. I'm just trying to pull up something so I know my dates are correct on when I put it in Demon Blade. So, issue 1. Yeah. So Demon Blade takes place 100 years after Oda Nobunaga ends series and whatnot. We follow the Dog Emperor in that concept. But I still had to do research on the area and whatnot. Anybody who does their research, actually looking at, the history and learning from it, will learn there might be a little bit of an issue with the concept that was brought forth by, a very money-hungry English teacher that had no research. This is who we have for a majority of the fact that is Yasuke. That he may exist, he may not. We don't know. The most we know is, yes, there were some African individuals in with the Dutch. And the premise of what occurred, which is written in Shogun. The series Shogun. Or Rurouni. So, when we talk about this, a lot of people will use that as, basis in fiction and whatnot. But Yasuke's presence was debatable. Because it's like, did they have Africans on the ship? Maybe. It's possible. Was there an African that was befriended by Nobunaga? Possible. Was he able to become a part of Nobunaga's cabinet? No. Was he able to become a samurai? No. And there's several reasons. People don't understand what a samurai is. For one, a samurai is not your lackadaisy, just random person who comes to age and rises. You become a samurai by one of two ways. One, you are born a noble. Or two, you claim, I think it's over 200 heads. You got your notoriety and promise through claiming the heads of your enemies. That latter part was a little harder to come by, and whatnot. And yeah, there may have been a few people that came through and got the notoriety of samurai, but more than likely they were vassals. Vassals can be on the battlefield, can be there with their, samurai lord. But a samurai is a very, very selective title. Not everybody is going to become a samurai. There's going to be a lot of vassals. Now, in my series Demon Blade, I use the story of the 47 Ronin, which are 47 members of a samurai known as... that's it. I'm trying to remember. Gosh. It's slipping my mind. Let me get it. 47... So, Asano. So, basically, Asano Nobunori was the leader of several men, but 47 came to stand with him, came to stand with his honor being returned. And that's sort of the premise I'm working Demon Blade off of. That, there's 47, but there's not all of them. And I have the villain rising up from that from more than the 47. So from the same size, from the same story. Yasuke just sort of ends up there. And it's like, he ended up there through the Dutch trading ships. One, the Dutch trading ships were very, very blocked in from what part of Japan they could see. The Jesuits had a little bit more playthrough, but they could not go in and out certain areas, and they were still looked upon as, you know, outsiders. For crying out loud, to this day, people are still considered outsiders that are not of Japanese descent. Some even that are of Japanese descent. Some people who go there because the law stands as it is that if you are half Japanese, as long as you go to Japan by your 18th birthday, you can claim your Japanese citizenship. But you have to be in Japan to do that. And I think it's pretty much you have to stay in Japan the rest of your life. So it's like, oh, well, I'm going to completely stay here for the rest of the time. So that is where we get some of the story, some of the myths that people don't seem to get right about citizenship, don't get right about samurai and whatnot. So we'll be going into a bit more of that as we go. We're going to draw some Witchin, though. So our other comic series, Witchin comedy series, what's just completely just humor and satire a little bit. But, yeah. So we're going to cover that a bit tonight. We're going to go through what Assassin's Creed's getting wrong, what Assassin's Creed may be getting right. It's debatable. The problem being here is Assassin's Creed, while they're not claiming to be, you know, a factor of truth in historical accuracy, they have a history of pissing off groups, and particularly Ubisoft, on historical lies, and going through historical lies, and sort of misnomering them, spreading them around. They do a little research now and then, but the research in Shadow seems to be the weakest and the most offensive. And how is it most offensive? Well, you have a game in the time of Oda Nobunaga where guns are being introduced to the world of Japan, where the age of samurai is changing. We're going away from daimyos being lords of multiple different individual countries in themselves or cities or whatnot, to the age of one rule of most of Japan. Now, I have to say most of Japan because it's sketchy on whether or not the northern lands were part of the timeline as well during Oda Nobunaga, because they weren't really claimed by Nobunaga, and wasn't really claimed by later the Tokugawas, who would become the pinnacle of the shogunate. And it's also important to note that while there was always a shogun since Oda Nobunaga, for the longest period of time until the Meiji, that the shogunate pretty much still had to answer to the emperor. So the emperor is still in charge. So it's kind of like a military control, but you have sort of a nobility still in charge in some sense of the order. I mean, it flipped and flopped on who was the emperor and what kind of power the emperor had over the years, especially under Tokugawas. Some of them, you know, pretty much were puppets, but they were basically put in place as nobility figureheads, basically. So, when we talk about the history of Oda Nobunaga, it's important to know Oda Nobunaga was one of the first people that brought in guns into the population of Japan. He saw their benefit with the Dutch sailors that came to be the origin of what the story of Shogun is. I have to state the story of Shogun. You can see the series on Hulu. You can see the original series somewhere based from 1970s or 80s. Both, they're also sketchy on if they're telling the truth, but at the same time, it's taken by Japan as a little more believable because those events, there's truth in the events. That go underway. So when we talk about situations of, the Dutch involvement, the Dutch were the first people to really be accepted by the Japanese to come and do trade with them. Japan had for the longest time, a non-interaction concept, and this is mainly due to the wars of China with them, the wars of pretty much a lot of things. And there was a crack with the Dutch traders. Years later, it would take America to basically say, no, you're opening your borders. With Perry. Now, it'd be interesting, follow through and go through with the history of that. And maybe next time we will, or one time we'll go through this. The actual history of Japan. And, there's stuff I absolutely could learn. Because, like I said, I am not an expert on Nobunaga. In any sense, because I haven't done much research on it. Nobunaga. I just have to go with what I've read and what I've seen in history books. And so then we have what is involved with the Dutch traders. So the Dutch traders initially were shipwrecked on Japan. That is how they basically opened up their concept. Again, see Shogun for sort of the real life, for the take on it based off the real life. Let me pull the real life person's name. So it was, where is it?
New year, new me. That's the plan. Bought a gym membership, oh man. By February,
okay, so based off of the real English, well, he's an English sailor, but he was with the Dutch. Will Adams. So basically, they interlock, and Will crashes there, and sort of he lets the Dutch in to try and help take Will back. And the Dutch introduce trade and all that stuff, and so does Will. Now, you'd be like, oh, he's not Will, it's John Blackthorne. John Blackthorne's the character in Shogun. The real name is Will Adams, of the individual who was with, who met with Oda Nobunaga, and basically created sort of an introduction to the world. So that's where most of this stuff. If it wasn't for the frequently referred to samurai in the popular culture, wouldn't be either. Okay, that we're getting a bit into this. All right. So when we talk about that stuff, that's gonna come about. Now, the easier stuff to sort of debunk that they've got going on. We'll start with a minor character, I believe. I don't know, because the game's not out, and I'm not going to play the game because I don't really like the Assassin's Creed. Anyways, people can argue, it's like, oh, you don't know anything about the Assassin's Creed. I know the Assassin's Creeds are basically... It's become crap. It really has. Over the years, people can be like, "Oh, well, I love the action. I love the action." The story is crap. And as of right now, where Ubisoft is they need this to succeed, because they've spent a lot of money in this, and they are bankrupt. They are in horrible case if they don't have this succeed. So they are pulling out all the guns to say, hey, we got this game. You'll love it, right? And the fact of the matter is for the last 2 years, they've been trying to make this game and promotion and work and state this is all historical accuracy. The most funny inaccuracy they had of historical accuracy was they put on a Japanese samurai sword, a katana, on display. They didn't care to note where the katana came from. They just got a katana and said, oh, well, this is a legendary katana used in the past. It was one of Zoro from One Piece's katanas. It's a noted katana, but it's not from anywhere in history. Now, when you get to the stuff like the samurai girl, so this is one of the side characters. I don't know how much her involvement is. It's debatable through what people have seen and what people have noted, and what has slipped through people's note. When you talk about samurai, sumo, not until 1997 have women been allowed to participate in sumo at all. So, first line, you have a female sumo wrestler in the 1600s. Second line of that concept, not only were women not allowed till 1997 to be in sumo, the professional art of sumo, they are not only not allowed, they are not allowed to touch the ring. So a few years ago, they had a sumo wrestler that had a heart problem in the ring, and the people that responded were female medics there to take him out. They could not allow the medics to go into the ring to save the man's life, because it is considered sacred and it is considered an offense if a woman enters a sumo ring. So, Ubisoft, for one, is just flat out lying to people about that. It'd be like, oh, okay, well, yeah, you're wrong there. That's one thing wrong. Another thing, they used a lot of design of the world, of the layout and whatnot, based on China, not Japan. So we have Chinese architecture. We have incorrect language put through there. They've, signs and painted in buildings not in the correct Japanese and not corrected at all. So we're talking about, basically an inaccuracy in the locality on top of inaccuracy in what is considered offensive to a culture. In just two concepts, and we haven't even really touched Yasuke, we haven't really touched our female ninja character, which are the two main characters. So you're going to see concepts and problems come out in and out about this. Will the game sell? It'll sell some. Will it sell a lot? I don't know. There might be some memers by it. I don't know. Will people believe the critical reviews? Probably not. The way a lot of these critical reviewed games have been, as of late, is they'll give high praise to a game, And most people will be like, bullcrap, and play something else. So there's little hope for Ubisoft to succeed here. I think they have to make a couple billion to really succeed and make money. Because this game has cost them a lot already. And the fact that there's probably also lawsuits by individuals in Japan against Ubisoft for their representation. And, well, you add the lawsuits on top of Ubisoft already having employment issues, already having issues with, legality issues, because they've had a couple of not so great employees. So you have to look at it and be like, well, crap. Are they going to succeed here? And the answer probably is not. No, it's probably going to be the end of Ubisoft. And when you base yourself on fictional lie, and I mean, I won't, I'm not going to say, Ubisoft is in the wrong for thinking Yasuke would be a good element to their game. If I were in their position and trying to be like, well, we need this game to make money. We need to attract the largest audience, so we need to make sort of the biggest fan base we can out of this and attract the largest audience. Now, offending the people of one country to bring in another minority audience, more than likely, is a risky game. It's a risky game. But then also basing your historical record on something that, as we will go through and prove, is more than likely a lie of a English professor. Yeah, it's more than likely we are going to see maybe their story is not quite what it seems. Do I believe they could do something of, note with the series, or if they could have made better choices? Yes, they could have. Hell, letting us play someone like Nobunaga or a member of Nobunaga's group would have alone be great. But the offense of taking a race that rarely was involved in the culture and making that the prominent character versus the prominent race of that location. Or, I understand, we had in the 3 that had the American history. And they did follow American history kind of to the letter. I mean, they had fictionalized, of course. But they used a Native American. I was fine with that. Native Americans were involved, and, we're talking about the periods of the Revolutionary War and the Indian War involved in that game. So having somebody around that time period fits. I would have even agreed if they had, an African American in that game, because we had African Americans in the country at that time, and some members, including the first person shot in the Revolutionary War, on record, was an African American. So it's important elements to note from history, but it's things we need to know. And the more we fictionalize history, the more a lot of people these days will go, poo-poo the American history and be like, oh, well, a lot of that is fictionalized, hero worship and whatnot. Some of it might be hero worship, but honestly, hero worship is something that is important to creating a society. If you don't give your community, if you don't give something for your country to survive, then it more likely is going to have a hard time swallowing the bigger stuff. A good take was, I forget which story I read, that said, the smaller things to swallow, the larger lies we tell help the smaller lies be taken. Look. Wrong button. Alright! But we're going to get to some of this going forward. So, we have the Yasuke debunking pseudo-history myths about the Black Samurai. So, I'm going to try and move my territory here. So, this is from the Modern Elude. And basically covers the origin of Yasuke. So the story of Yasuke, a man of African origin, found his way in Japan during Toruma's Sengoku period, serves the compelling case of the phenomenon Yasuke's historical journey and possibly being a slave, becoming a retainer in the household of Nobunaga, one of Japanese most influential daimyos, is a narrative ripe for extortion and reinterpretation, because it is. The narrative, however, has not been immune to influences of Afrocentric romanticism, particularly strong around followers of the Afrocentric ideal of North America. This ideal is perspective often seen and rewritten in the Afrocentric ideal, leading to romanticized and sometimes ahistorical myths that evaluate Yasuke from his documented role as a kyosho, a page or sword bearer. See, that is more accurate to what he could be. He would not be able to become a samurai because he does not own land. He is not a noble. He is not someone who could do that as a property. The establishment stems in the deeper cultural, historic yearning among descendants of slaves in North America. So this story is very much mainly exists because North America came up with this concept. Yasuke arrived in 1579 in the services of the Italian Jesuit ministry of Alessandro Valagiano. My Italian sucks. His tenure in Japan was brief, lasting from 17th of August 1579 to June 1582. So, we are talking about 5 years. Marked him as one of the earliest recorded Africans in Japan history, unlike the narratives propelled by Afrocentric romanticism, and historical documents portray Yusuke not as a samurai, but as a retainer. And that is a key. A retainer is something different than a samurai. That's about as high as a normal civilian could be under samurai, towards becoming a samurai. So, even if we go into something like Samurai X, the story of Rurouni Kenshin, if we go with that as a story, Kenshin could never actually be a samurai because he didn't own land. He wasn't a noble. Well, I mean, I guess he could because he did claim enough heads. So maybe he was awarded that title. I don't know. We never really kind of go too deep in how Kenshin becomes a samurai. And that's also got its own problems. And maybe we'll touch upon it when we hit some Japan's issues. But we're waiting for the next one to drop. So that'll be when we talk about that. So, most of this is written down by the Jesuit ministry Luis Flores and Soichi Kyoki, Nobunaga's official chronicle. So that's basically where we get the individual information there. Now, how it came to be in common language or in common work is, let's see here. We even have mostly research and explanation. documentations involving Japan and Ubisoft, appalling and seemed an attempt of true fan fiction. Basically, yeah, it's fan fiction. Essentially, what Ubisoft is creating is fan fiction. So we have some more elements here of the concept of Yasuke. The Legendary Wars. It was created. So where this whole Yasuke stuff comes from is a fictionalization of a book at George Washington University by Howard University, co-sponsored by Howard University. So the concept, and this is by, let's see, who is HarperCollins, Lockley's book. Okay, so Lockley, Thomas Lockley, 2019. Okay, so this is we cannot intrude Yasuke's historical facts through an American Thomas Lockley. He effectively made up most of Yasuke's story. He's been called out on this crap multiple times. And this is where most of the fact that Yasuke exists and the concept of a black samurai gets its falsehood. And the fact that it was a book that was released, and the fiction that Lockley put in his book as fact was proven to be not only wrong, but, you know, it was ran by a lot of people and thought, hey, this is true, this is great. No. Lockley lied, essentially. Lockley lied. No surprise. An American college professor lied. Not something new. So a lot of this has been proven to not react. So we basically have our retainer. So we're just going to cover Yasuke's history a bit here. Then we have, of course, what we get here. This here is the Wikipedia article. The reason I don't include this Wikipedia article is a lot of this is based on Lockley's work. So a lot of this has been proven not right, yet Wikipedia's kept it in. Even though it's been proven it's not true. So there's a big debate with Japan trying to get this corrected, trying to remove this information that has been falsified on Wikipedia. And I don't know if it's been updated, but essentially we are talking about a very great falsehood that goes around and continues to be a lie that Ubisoft was like, well, hell, let's make that our main character. As you want to offend an entire culture to glorify another culture, and it's kind of disgusting. It really is. It's like if I wanted to say, you know, the Greek culture had Americans in it. There was a Native American in Greek culture. Not true. In fact, I could probably be proven very easily wrong that there were probably no Native American that came over to Greek. But it's possible. It's possible. The fictionized sort of history is a big problem. Now, there's some that may be true and some that may be wrong. We now know these days, when I grew up, it was pretty much an understanding that Christopher Columbus came to America and founded America. The Americas, or, well, the Indies, as he called them, but founded the country, he didn't find the country. He discovered America from the Native Americans. When historical fact and actual artifacts we're finding, it could be actually the Vikings were the first ones here. But then you also have to consider, oh wait, a lot of Native Americans are of descendants from Asian culture. A little bit, just a fraction. Because the way Native Americans came about into this country was by crossing the straits from Russia to Alaska and down into the Americas. So that's where their ancestral sort of culture kind of goes through historical discovery. But that may also not be true. We don't know. We don't have chronicle events state-wise. So we don't know exactly the origin of Native American culture in a historical sense. We know their legends, we know their myths, we know, how they came to be. We could even go through the concepts of how, the Pacific Islanders, came about and got to their land. It's basically people just kept traveling on boats and finding and discovering lands. So we don't know pinpoint accuracy of the origin of that. We do know mankind, well, actually, this has been one of the greatest debates recently too. So a lot of people believe that in history, as in the past stated, that mankind came from the Euphrates region of the world. That the origins of man came from that area, which, follows along the concept of biblical history. Problem is recently we're starting to discover that maybe that's not true. Maybe, humans kind of were always sporadically displaced. So we're finding evidence that humankind may have evolved throughout the world in different places in different ways. Which makes sense. We are genetically different in places. We have different concepts, the way our skin, the way our eyes, the way our hair indicates that each group has a sort of genetic territory. One of my favorite concepts, and one of the concepts I use in Demon Blade, and that you also will see in the series Golden Kamuy, is the Ainu culture. Ainu culture are the first natives of Japan. They were there before the Japanese who became the Chinese that moved over and became Japanese got there. So the Ainu culture was around for a good history before. And one of the ways you could tell the Ainu culture was their eyes. In Japan genetic makeup, it is very rare to get a pair of blue eyes through natural means, through genetic makeup of a Japanese individual. In Ainu, they have blue eyes. The blue eyes come from their genetic history with Russians. So the Ainu are partially Russian, partially Japanese. So when you have a character in an anime that is Japanese and they have blue eyes, more than likely the best way to describe them is they are from Ainu culture. So we are going to go back to drawing. We kind of covered Yasuke. Did Yasuke exist? I have no reason to doubt that he did not exist. So he existed. Did Yasuke... did I close all the ninja stuff? I did, didn't I? So, and of course it's going to give me history. So, of course, we kind of go into that, and we kind of covered a little bit of the sumo, which there's not much to cover other than it's still illegal for a woman to enter a professional sumo ring. Now, I have to state professional, because there is a female sumo sport now, but it is not considered appropriate by the Japanese culture. Alright. I need to look back at another chapter of Witchin to see how this character appears. Actually, that was the chapter I need. Let's see. Large icons. Okay, that's how I got her. Looking. Alright. I don't need this page anymore. I got my copy there. Alright. So her hair's a little more. Take this. So, when I talk about, you know, in a story, trying to do some history, and I've stated this before. I mean, like I said, with Demon Blade, there's a lot of history and historical fact that I sort of bend to fiction, and by no means is Demon Blade historically accurate. Do I think there's a chance out of the people of Lord Asano that one maybe has gone sort of a vengeance route different than the sort of trying to reacquire or bring back the honor of their fallen lord? Yes, it's very possible. I have no doubt that one, if not others of the 47, or someone else that was not considered to join the 47, could have had vengeful means. And I mean, to be honest, the 47 samurai, 47 Ronin as they sometimes are called, the act was a matter of trying to regain their lord's honor. It wasn't a matter of, you know, did they do it out of vengeance or revenge? Yes, they essentially did do what they did. And what they did that night, and I think it was January 6th, 1704, was they basically, the story of the 47 is Asano was a leader under a daimyo, samurai leader. He was a bit crass in the imperial court because he's a bit more of a country bumpkin-esque samurai. And in his crassness in the court, a gentleman named Kira, who was another daimyo or samurai lord essentially, executed Asano for his crassness. And history says maybe Asano unleashed his sword, which is unheard of in front of a shogun or an emperor. But Asano was effectively executed, carried out by the order of Kira. Asano's men found out about this, and they were distraught. They were like, we have no lord, we have no country. Basically, everything we have was now taken by Kira, who essentially killed their lord and dishonored them. So they played the long game. They were like, okay, we will cozy up to Kira a little bit. We will go back and be like normal farmers, normal lives and whatnot. And then come the year 1704 in January, 47 of those samurai went to Kira's temple or Kira's household, slaughtered all his men, and immediately killed Kira in honor of Asano. Then, right after they did this duty, they immediately went to the shogun, turned in their swords, and were ordered under the shogun to commit seppuku, which they did honorably. 47 Ronin originally were used as, you know, kind of a don't bring dishonor to your family or whatnot, or it was used as a warning initially, and it's become more of a historical sort of honor. People sort of romanticize the 47 and whatnot, and so they became more of a heroic sense in Japanese culture and Japanese history. So you have Asano kind of honored a little bit by the story, and they kind of look at him in better light now in history, and look at Kira as pretty much the villain these days. And I by no means do differently. We'll be getting into this a lot in issue 13 of Demon Blade, because a lot of this is based in the story of the main villain, who was not one of the 47, but was a member of Asano's men and was working with the 47 up until the moment of Kira's assassination. And you will see sort of this fictionalized story where Mai will actually be there at the time of Kira's destruction. Wow, I take a sip of water and my head tilts. Weird. So, when we talk about certain things of fiction, it's important to note, that's way bigger, where history ends and fiction takes over. And the historical events of the 47 Ronin are documented well. There was a crappy Keanu Reeves film that tried to play it off. The film was put in demons and all this other stuff involved, and I don't even know if they properly denote Asano's loss in that film, the loss of Asano, because it is an important note, because it was a matter of Asano was looked upon early as this is how you act before the shogunate, this is how you act before these governments. And so we have these elements, and when I bring up characters like Kad or Yoku in the story of Demon Blade, when I bring him up, and I do have him as a samurai, and how does he get that samurai? Well, Shin Yoku is not his official name. His official name is, I think it's Setoyoshi Date. He is the grandson of one of the Date daimyo. But I am mixing in the concept that, his father was Dutch, his mother was, looked horribly down upon for having a Dutch lover and having a Hafu child. And I don't want to give up the spoils, what happened to each of them. Well, we know what happens to Yoku. He becomes a samurai, goes on to become more and more mad and insane, to the point that he commissions the Demon Blade to be made, and in his act of vengeance, he steals the heart of Mai. Literally steals her heart and has it forged into the Demon Blade. which there turns around and becomes the object of the of our main story, held by our main character Tetsu / Tetra. So I wanted to give, good legend as to why he has it, or what came about, how he came about doing it. And it establishes, and so when I go through the historical facts, I'm going to be like, okay, well, the date of 1704 to 1706, because Mai and Yoku's and Kaji's death occurs in 1706. I believe it is January 4th? Or I may have done it January 4th. No, January 6th. It's got to be January 6th. In fact, let me see here. Let me see if I can open it. And this is not a spoiler. This is in Chapter 1 of Demon Blade. So...
the key to the city. They try to mimic.
All right.
No one's close.
Yeah, January 4th, 1706.
Even in the rain, I never lose my
is what I have it written down as.
how I shine wherever I go. Awards and accolades.
So, the irony of this song, and I've literally got a scene with this character being introduced. So yeah, when I tell the story and try and do there, I put some historical fact in there with Asano's concept, and make Yoku out to be a 48th member of the 47. That due to and it's not really a big spoiler, but Yoku was not able to participate because he had a fractured leg from training. So Yoku, when we meet Yoku in the story in Chapter 14, or when we get to that point, he's not able to participate in the combat. What happened that night in 1704, basically... the character, or the individuals, one individual died. That's one thing that most people don't remember with the 47. It was not 47 people put up to seppuku at the same time around the Emperor after the incident, because one of the members of the 47 died in combat. Just one. And so it was 46 members that went to the execution. And when I cover it in Chapter 14, a lot of names are going to be actual names of individuals, including one individual who actually had his daughters working for Kira to be sort of the spies on the inside for them. So... so that is basically sort of how I would treat history to create a fictionalized character. How Ubisoft basically went is they're like, oh, well, we read this book. This is exactly how they probably did it. We want to create a new game. We want to do it in Japan, and one person was probably like, oh, well, I read the Yasuke book. That's really good about the history of Yasuke. Let's use him as the main character. And the fact that they didn't really research, and they didn't do a lot of research in the series. So, because like I said, there's inaccuracies already pointed out in the game, and this was done for like when the demo dropped, I think over almost half a year ago. That they're buildings that aren't accurate to Japan. They're not accurate to that point in Japan. And it's important to note, what kind of buildings would look like what kind of areas. And there's ways to easily research this. And I will go back to that page of Demon Blade. Just right, open it up again. This is an Ainu hut. This is an actual design of an Ainu hut. Covered in snow. That's exactly how it would be presented in the real world. And I used basis of actual Ainu huts. So when we talk about creating a historical moment, using an actual historical building, or using a location, do some research. It's simple. Just do some research. It doesn't cost much to do some research on places. And if you're going to do something about culture, and this is what really gets me, it's like, if they did it here, where else did Ubisoft completely just destroy the culture? I imagine the American one and the pirate one are more accurate than anything. Maybe the French Revolution, or because we have more account historical record on those. But when we get into stuff like the Egyptian one, the Viking one, how much is accurate to the period? How much is been properly researched? I mean, there's a lot of romanticizing of the Viking culture. Not to say there's not actual notation of the Viking culture, but there's a lot of romanticizing of the Viking culture. Hell, one of my favorite anime right now is, Vinland Saga. It's a romanticization of the Viking culture. But essentially, that doesn't matter if you go with the romanticize, as long as you make sure some of it is historically genuine. Buildings, the looks of weapons, stuff like that. Ubisoft put Yasuke in gold armor. One, gold was extremely rare in Japan. Is very prized, very valuable, mostly used in coin. Sometimes used in gold leaf for the emperor or the shogunate, not for someone to go walking around in gold armor. 2, gold armor would suck. Gold is a wonderful metal, the purest of all metals. But it's also very, very easy to cut. It is a very delicate metal. If you thin it down and paper thin, it becomes easily crushed in your hand. It is not a strong metal. You would not make armor with a strong metal. Now, mind you, most samurai armor was paper, not metal. It was layered upon layer upon layer upon layer of paper. Still heavy as crap and lacquered, but you would not use gold to even paint that armor. You would use something like a red or a black or a blue, maybe a little bit of blue somewhere in there with some cloth. Something that could be readily and easily created by using flowers and crushing them and making a dye. Because that's the old way you would make paint. That's the old way you would make dyes, is by crushing flowers into a powder and having a color from there. Easier colors to come by would be green, blue, or red. I can't speak for Asia because I don't know if Asia followed the same concept, but in in European culture, purple was considered royal. So no one could wear purple except for royalty. And then when we go into a lot more historical moments, such as, biblical times, one of the greatest inaccuracies I have found in what we see with the Bible. I mean, one is Jesus is a white guy with white hair. More than likely, he was probably a little bit more Middle Eastern looking. And one of the interpretations that we see a lot of his mother is she walks around in a blue robe. Blue is like the rarer dye at the time of biblical use. It would have been highly expensive, highly prized, highly difficult to come by. Because a lot of blue in that area would have come from chemicals that are poisonous. People would die to dye your clothing. And so the concept of Mary walking around in a blue robe is always a laugh to me. It's an artistic choice that I get why it was, but it was brought about, mostly by the Renaissance period and whatnot to romanticize the biblical culture of the Bible. And a lot of that happened, and a lot of the reason we have the appearance of Christ as he is because it was done by mostly Italian or French painters. That's why. Occasional couple Russian or some other areas, but that's where most of the paintings came from. That's where we get the iconic look of Jesus these days, and others in that period. They didn't use actual people from the Middle East to use. Well, mind you, they were probably fighting those kind of people at this time.
Unspoken words, feeling lost, but knowing it hurts, we laugh, we cry, we're there.
Okay. I know I've not been doing much actual art in this stream. So when we talk about certain things, okay, that's separate. Okay, I did get that separate. All right. What? What did I just do? Undo that. Whatever I just did. I thought I was doing merge. Why am I not doing merge? No. What the? Merge. What the heck is going on? Why am I not seeing this when I merge? I'm not going to touch it then. I'm not going to touch it. Taking the merge. I don't know why. I don't know why it's taking the merge out. So, I mean, that's one thing to talk about. Can I find what is going on? I want to make sure I get accuracy on this before I drop this. There was a correction I wanted to sort of, or something I wanted to bring attention to. Yeah, okay. It comes from NBC, so we'll use this as an act. So, a couple weeks ago, we did the trans, everybody gets things wrong in the trans bill. So, this is unlikely to pass, but Texas has a law in the bill, and I'm going to bring up the top part so you guys can see it. That it would make identifying as trans illegal. Now, I am all for, what issues might be out there, with groups having against transgenders and, not having trans in sports. We've covered that all in the trans thing. This is just flat out, trying to make criminals. Trying to legalize people for existing. And that is absolutely wrong. I've not heard anybody on the right cover this story. I wish they would. It'd be interesting to see their opinions because that's a little too far. That is absolutely a little too far. Now, this came down the line on the 10th, so it crossed my desk a little while ago. And it's introduced by Tom Olberson, who basically wants to make it a state felony to basically identify as trans. He wants to make it a crime, a felony that you identify as trans, you're committing a crime. That is absolutely going too far in law. That, and I have to call that crap out. So I wanted to do a little correction on that. I saw that come down the line, and I know a lot of people, there was mixed reviews on my view of that. We're about 50-50 with up and down votes on that stream that we did a couple weeks ago covering about the trans issues. But if Texas passes that law, or passes something similar, or if any state passes that, that is flat out illegal. That is going too far in crime. That is basically punishing somebody because they like something. Or punishing something because they think a different way. That is a crime. That is flat out, unconstitutional. That is going too far. Now, do I agree, with how things have been coming about since doing that one a couple weeks ago? I still agree. I mean, there are issues, particularly with Maine, that I kind of understand, not only understand, but respect the opinions and views that, I'm against, and I've stated this before, I am against the concept of trans athletes being in women's sports. I am against that. I'm against the opposite as well, but I mean, it's a matter of genetics, and the activists, and this is the key, we have to state, the people who are going and demanding all this stuff is activists. Usually not the individuals who fall under the law, but there are a few, and there are a few that go way too rabid, way too far. And we see it. There are a large amount of crimes being committed by individuals who declare themselves as trans. We kind of covered it. But I wanted to cover that as a little brief net bit. I kind of stated this out before in other streams. So I wanted to cover that sort of in the middle of this, because there's a different argument here. Not to mention that I'm sure there's probably something inappropriate here. And we'll find more out when Ubisoft launches the game. The game doesn't launch until the 20th. Today is the 18th. So it's the reason why we kind of do this. We're kind of talking about this subject is because it's about to be released. We will see how it comes to play. I am sure a lot of people are going to poo-poo the game. I don't know if the sales will be there. The sales are not looking like to be there. It's kind of like the sales for Snow White. So Disney Snow White has not come out yet at this time. Pre-sales, and I saw some people put out these pre-sales. So, people going to the movie theater, they know they're going to go to the movie theater and see Snow White. And they're basically saying, hey, let me order my tickets online. There are literally people posting movie theaters that are empty. So it's like, this is like the opening showing of this film, and they're like, it's gonna be empty. So it's sort of the same concept there with Ubisoft in this game. They do feel that a lot of people feel the sales aren't going to be there. The sales just aren't going to be there. And part of the reason is either you're a huge Assassin's Creed player or you're not. And even taking out the inaccuracies, the historic stuff, and offense to Japan and Japanese individuals, Ubisoft has been bleeding dry and themselves dry and not doing well in the sales. And a lot of that is due to Ubisoft and how they sell themselves sell their games and portray themselves. And then there's the lawsuits that are involved with legal issues that Ubisoft has done. It cost them lots. I mean, we're sort of in the same scenario with a lot of news media, classic traditional news media, that they're having to face repercussions of their actions, and their repercussions are going to come back and haunt them because they're haunting them now because their sales are not great. And groups like CNN, well, they have lawsuits, huge lawsuits. So they have an issue with basically they're bleeding money. They're bleeding money, and they're not getting the money back. And so those companies may CNN. I mean, CNN numbers are not good. If you actually look at the viewership numbers, they are lower than Cartoon Network. They are lower than Nickelodeon. Lower than Discovery Channel. I love the Discovery Channel and some of the content on the Discovery Channel. But that is low. And the fact that they continue to get lawsuits because how they treat individuals or how they've reported the news tend to be falsehoods. Let's try and so we have a lot of legal issues coming up about them. So I mean, it's to keep in mind. And in fact, let me see what legal issues we have in with Ubisoft. So just get. So they're facing a potential class action lawsuit for alleging it is illegally shared personally identifiable information about Ubisoft store users with Meta. So they illegally gave out their user information. That's one. That is the big one, because that's going to be a huge headache for Ubisoft. Ex-Ubisoft executive. This was literally a few days ago. On March the 10th, Ubisoft execs go for trial for harassment, as union says CEO. So they're not following unions, and the unions are suing them. So Ubisoft admits people lost trust in the process. That's an IGN article from December 2021. New lawsuit alleges Ubisoft shared user data of Meta. We kind of got that. California lawsuit challenges Ubisoft over The Crew. That was back in 2024. So, Ubisoft's got a lot of legal issues. A lot of legal issues. So it's not unheard of for us in the next month or so. It won't be immediate. It will be like probably, we're in March, probably June, July. I would not be surprised to hear that Ubisoft, the sales weren't great for Assassin's Creed Shadows, and Ubisoft is now having to completely formally close shop. You'd wait about 3 months or so, and we'll do that. It wouldn't be as bad if Ubisoft hadn't done a bunch of lawsuits, and that potential lawsuits from this game are possible. And maybe we'll talk about Snow White next week. Maybe we'll do the Disney problem. We'll look at Disney, probably go over that, and where Disney is failing to proceed. Disney's basically said, oh, you don't like it? We're just going to keep making this. And it makes no sense. They're losing money. They have lost a ton of money. That they're, in fact, looking to sell probably ESPN and ABC. I need to get her shadow. So, in other news, so we'll cover a little bit more of Ubisoft as we get to it throughout the rest of the stream, which is much longer. It's another 45 minutes, essentially. Well, under 40 minutes, basically. Personal news. So it's like, okay, so tomorrow, there's nothing. We're not doing any stream. Thursday, we are doing a extra Dining and Doodles, because it would have been on Saturday. We've delayed this several times, and I'm kind of tired of delaying it. So I'm going to do a Dining and Doodles. We'll have another art stream on Thursday. Friday, we will be doing Chrono Trigger. So we're moved Chrono Trigger from Sunday to Friday. We're going to try and finish up Chrono Trigger probably in the next 3 Fridays. The current plan is for Batman, Arkham Asylum. But I might do Suikoden if they go on sale. I'm waiting on those. I've never played the Suikoden 1 or 2 because it's really hard to get a copy of Suikoden 1 and 2. Now it is not. So we might play that instead of Batman. It depends if it goes on sale or not. With Steam, we'll watch it. We're going to be watching it. I could buy it now, but I really just don't want to pay full price right now because I am trying to save some money. But, yeah, I mean, we need to... I'm going to try and work a bit more on making the streams a little bit more regular. Monday, we will do another Final Fantasy Rebirth. We ended last night where we start in Chapter 12. I noted it last night. I'm going to repeat it again tonight. If there's an episode of Rebirth you really don't care to watch, I understand. This one might be it. We're not going to really be going much in the story. It's kind of like the last chance to do X episode, what we're going to be doing. So we're going to be trying to finish up the Proto Relics. We're going to be trying to get the treasure from the pirate concept. We're going to be going back and forth to a bunch of the areas we used to be to complete a bunch of quests. That's what we're going to be doing next Monday on that game. And in Stardew Sunday, we will be doing another week and a half of Stardew Valley, where we will complete the spring of the first year as we explore a bunch of areas. I've got a couple of new areas that I'm going to be running some tests on tomorrow when I get through with that, but I don't know if I'll be able to do it tomorrow. I might have to do it Thursday. But I also have to do a lot of comic stuff. So we are at the end of Demon Blade Chapter 10. We are at the end of Witchin Chapter 6, which is what we're drawing right now. We're drawing the last few pages of Witchin Chapter 6. And those will come into play and start up with the new chapters. Witchin will just go straight into its new chapter. Demon Blade will probably have a And I can say this now because it's probably, if I follow the weekly structure, we're looking at probably mid-April to mid-May. Demon Blade will probably be on break. And the reason being is so I can get ahead of drawing with Demon Blade. I put far more detail in Demon Blade than I do in Witchin. I try to be a bit more cartoony with Witchin because it's fun, it's comedy, as the song states. It's Demon Blade. I mean, we're going into chapters where, as we've stated earlier, we're getting into the villain story, the main villain story of this chapter. We've been having fun with a little sort of football adventure, misadventure that's been going on. There's going to be a serious moment that hits at the end of this chapter that will be a little bit of pressure, but will be resolved. It's not like it's going to go and continue a story elements. It's pretty much an issue. It's the concept of you have two friends. You made a promise to one friend, and in doing that promise, you have to sacrifice something that another friend likes. And that's sort of what the Football 1 story is about. It allows us to introduce the Golem character, which is gonna conclude in a bit, but it also allows to sort of bring that sort of judgment down. It's like you're kind of, do you poison the water of your, of a friend that you don't care much about to save another friend's life? It's a very difficult decision to make. It's kind of the train Charlie Card concept a little bit. And we're going to be talking, I mean, that's going to basically be the plot that'll conclude in 11, because we have this whole big to-do that's already been released, that you have Tetra's friend, Sarah. Tetra made a promise that if neither one had a boyfriend or girlfriend, they would go together at the homecoming dance. Well, Mai wants to go to the dance, and so because they have to share a body, they're fighting over who gets to do it, and the way they're solving it is by participating in the football game of the homecoming game. And in the process, another friend who is huge into football, wanted to be on the team, they helped him get on the team. This is sort of destroying their dream by making a joke of it, essentially. And so Tetsu/Tetra are gonna have to deal with the difficult decision. Do they continue to fight for their ability to be at the homecoming dance with their friend, or do they, and therefore destroying their other friend's dream of being in football? Or does he, do they strike as deal, basically letting the football continue? Not going to spoil what happens. I did make a decision. It was like, okay, this way, and it'll go into, and will it cause some roughness between the friends? We don't know. That's sort of the friendship angle and what goes on between the friend Tetsu/Tetra's friends. It's always a mixed bag. I mean, I kind of know the one character out of the three. So you have Sarah, who is Tetsu's best friend from childhood. You have Roland, who is the football fan, a good friend. You're going to get a bit of when the two of them met in the beginning of chapter 11. So the next chapter, we're going to get a little bit of when the two met. And, see how the relationship between the two of them sort of progressed and became strong. The only one I'm kind of not going to glamorize out of the three, or out of all the people involved, is Mai. Mai's kind of doing it out of greed, and Mai's a very greedy person. She's more gluttonous than greed, I guess. She's more into the gluttony of, I deserve this because I am me. Concept more so than the greed of it. But I mean, we've already established she spends money like a freaking water, and she eats insane amount of food like crazy. Do I have? Okay. I also have to work on Ida's look for the next chapter. Actually, she's gonna be having several looks in the next chapter. I forgot. It's gonna be it's gonna start a week after all the events we have in here in Witchin. But Ida's going to be changing outfits several times because a couple weeks are going to go by in one chapter. And the only one I have established is her work uniform, which is going to be which is the cover image for her. But I've got to establish what I want to put her in. Outside of that, she's gonna be. The chapter is literally about enemies that are rising up against Ida and her progression. Troublemakers. Not so much enemies. Some enemies, but troublemakers. And it's sort of the drawing we're doing here of. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Gosh, I don't remember her freaking name. Why don't I remember her freaking name? Starts with a B. I know that much because it was A, B, and E were the letters I chose. Well, to be honest, actually, most of the characters, especially the female characters, are based off of witches in culture, so in media and culture and whatnot. So, trying to remember, I think it's no, wait, that's the no words panel. I don't think. That is page 10. Oh, do I not have any of the words on that? Dadgummit. Try and open the freaking. Okay, here we go. Bridget. Okay, this is Bridget O'Grady. So she's named after the traditional witch from the Crucible. So one of the witches was named Bridget. That's where she gets her name. Diane is also named after a witch. So is Ida. So is Abigail. I think Sydney's the only one so far. Callie's named after a witch too. Callie, the only scene in me drawing randomly moment, Callie is the only female cast member that has not appeared that has the name of a witch. So Sydney is the only one because Sydney was kind of created out of just random. As I was drawing, I was like, oh, let's have this character go crazy, love crazy over Ida. And it just kept progressing. It's like, no, let's make her really go love crazy. Let's make her a freaking Kodachi. Because a lot of witching is Rama 1/2 elements to it. And so, yeah, we have a very, very obsessive character already in the story named Sydney. So, a tech head goth girl that has a love and affinity for witches, and thus has become a little possessive when Ida comes into play. And so we'll see that. We will see how much possessing that she will come by. Let's see here. We're going to try and put a backpack up against the wall, because poor Bridget is out of her room.
Pixels dancing on the screen. We've played it all, we've seen the scenes. Time to wrap up this arcade dream. Hear the curtain fall, it's
Wait a second. Oh, no, I'm trying to put that on. That's why I'm doing it.
like, comment, and subscribe.
Alright, so let's,
This game's over, but it's not the end.
So, everything that's occurred so far in Witchin has occurred in 2 days. So, essentially, Ida met Bridget the day before. Yeah, everything's occurred in 2 days. Yeah. Come chapter 7, those 2 days are going to change to several weeks. Because I have a character I need to introduce that will be the main problem, at least in chapter 8. That starts to be a problem in chapter 7. And that character will be introduced in chapter 8. Now, the other character is, well, I mean, there's 3 characters in general that are villains of this upcoming chapter. One we know, Deanne. Deanne Winters is the niece of the dean of the college, and technically Bridget's roommate. So the whole issue with Bridget and what will blend into a friendship between Bridget and Ida. A lot of that is also caused through turmoil of Deanne, and sort of sets Deanne as sort of the bitchy Karen of the dorm. And so we have little moments. This incident here that we're seeing is Ida catching Bridget outside her dorm room asleep. Ida's basically getting home after the whole talks with the Wandales late at night, and she's going in to her room and basically call it a night. Hopefully Abigail will ambush her again like usual. And finds Bridget outside, and it's the start of what will build as their relationship. Ida really is going to become a good friend to Bridget, and Bridget vice versa. And they may or may not also become a roommate. Diane's that kind of bitch that she treats her roommates horribly, and Ida may have a way to solve the problem, but may have to wait until they can figure out the problem exists and how the problem exists. This is Sydney's song.
You had your pointy hat on, babe, I can't help but feel the heat. Got your grimoire on your windowsill, I peeked in through the pane. Now I'm rummaging through your garden, such a lovely night for rain. Oh, witchy witch, I need you now.
I'll go back to the talk, because we gotta get to the talk. Alright, final bit of talk. We did Yusuke, I'm not gonna bother doing that. This is more Yusuke. Well, it's the government basic say, another lie of Assassin's Creed. And Tom Lockley. Cool. Yeah, Tom Lockley is the problem. So, Ninja. Let's talk about Ninja for a bit. So, the problem with the ninja of Oda Nobunaga versus the ninja that's seen in Ubisoft as the main character. A lot of the techniques, a lot of the issues, and a lot of the use of ninja at the time of Nobunaga is completely different than what Ubisoft is using. Ubisoft is using the romanticized concept of a ninja. And unfortunately, anime has not helped this, but a lot of Japan culture really kind of wants to de-romanticize the ninja. Yeah, it does sell a little bit and bring in tourist numbers, but they also want to make sure things are a little more accurate. Ninja weren't wearing black and weren't, jumping from rooftop to rooftop like crazy. It was easy to get to rooftops. Mind you, if you go to Japan, it's actually easy to get on a rooftop. It's just don't do it because they're more likely gonna arrest you for doing that kind of thing. There were some influencers who've tried, and I really suggest don't do it. But basically, the concepts of ninja were developed more so around the time period of what we got around 1603. Now, the problem is Nobunaga Oda Nobunaga died in 1582. Ninja weren't active in 1608. Or weren't active until 1608. They were also, or 1603. There was ninja practices before that. Ninja have existed years ago, but the pursuit of what is the modern concept of ninja, the assassin and whatnot, they did not exist when Nobunaga was alive. So the concept that a ninja is around with Nobunaga is such a bad take. There's so many representations of Nobunaga as well. Let's see if we can get some of the good ones in here. So we're just going to use some images. Here's one of my favorite from Drifters. Nobunaga, the creator of Hellsing series. He created a series called Drifters where people in time got shot back and had to fight each other in historical moment characters and whatnot. And the funniest one of course, was the villain was Jesus Christ. I don't know much about it because the anime ends as Jesus appears, but I've not read the manga, so I can't go into much. But Nobunaga is always set as this somewhat of a mad fool that was violent. He introduced, of course, guns to hit the armies. That's how he won his title as Shogun, as he had guns against men with swords and arrows. Now, mind you, guns didn't become prevalent in Japan in great use against the samurai until about 1860s. Right around the end of the Meiji era, well, I mean, right at the beginning of the Meiji and end of the Edo periods. So guns became a little bit more prominent then because that's when their doors were opened by Perry, and a lot more guns could flood into Japanese arms. But they did get some guns throughout the period, and there were some gun regiments, but Nobunaga, mostly, that's how he won his war. That's how he won the war, is he brought guns into play. Never bring a knife to a gunfight concept. And, I mean, essentially, after Nobunaga introduced it, guns were... they still made guns in Japan. They made some guns in Japan, but they were far cruder to the English and Dutch guns that would come.
Cupcakes on my face and confetti in my
because the rifles were far more manufactured, easier. There's some machine manufacturing coming later at the time, and versus Japan slowly handcrafting guns, and their crude guns would often explode and become a mess. I mean, if you want to see what a traditional Japanese rifle was, one of the best representations is in Ghibli's movie of Princess Mononoke, where you're seeing these crude shoulder-mounted guns that could very easily explode on you, being used as guns. They were great for doing things, but there were a lot of people that fell to just the gun exploding. Which is why samurai were prominent until the Meiji. Because once you had manufactured guns come into play, there was no hope against the samurai at that point. Sure, you had moments like the Shinzengumi, you had moments like, trying to think of some of the people in charge at the time. Pretty much the Shinzengumi, who were noted as samurai of that time period, with people like Hijikata. Still use swords, but they also would use guns at times. Basically, archery became ineffective against someone with a gun. So basically, yes, guns kind of in a way turned Japanese from their traditional samurai ways to more modernized ways, with other inventions such as steam and engines, electricity, phone lines coming into play. And then you get into situations like the Russo-Japanese War, which led to World War II, which we all know what happened with the Japanese in World War II. To the current state, where, and I do note that our current president is looking to have Japan become their own military, protect themselves, which a lot of people be like, oh, well, Japan relies on us. No, Japan doesn't want us there anymore in military output. They want to have their own. So, I mean, this has been something Japanese individuals have been wanting for a while. So, the fact that Japan's finally getting its own defense force, its own military in play now, they've kind of had they've had Japanese defense force for years, but they basically, all the power was built up behind the American army being there and stationed throughout Japan, and Japan kind of now wants that gone. So does the current president. So that's fine. We can keep trade going, and to my knowledge, Japan is one of the few countries that right now is willing to keep trading with the tariffs involved. I know a lot of other countries are saying no, but it comes around a few days later, and they're like, oh, well, maybe we'll do a tariff. And so it's a misnomer of what's going on with the tariffs. So we'll see what happens with those. But Japan's one of those is like, yeah, sure, fine, we'll pay tariffs. And a lot of that is because Japan understands America is a huge market for them. They don't want to upset that. But at the same time, they want independence. They are still very much of that mindset because they've lasted for centuries up until the late 1800s as a sort of almost medieval-like state. The concepts of honor, nobility, and being a proper Japanese person, lessons that were taught to us by people like Musashi, these are the traits of Japanese, and they kind of see anybody else as sort of being an offense. So going back to the concept of today's story, on today's argument, Ubisoft is basically offending the Japanese culture by doing their game. And it sort of rounds about the concept. It's like, if they treated the culture better, I don't know if they would, be more accepting. That would have been to, some other point of history to tell. Unfortunately, Ubisoft went the direction it did, and it's now pissing off an entire culture to appease another culture. And that's sort of the problem here. When you have a concept that's like, oh, it needs to exist, but we want to make it our own sort of story by doing this or that, you need to be aware of the no-go zones, the problem issues along the line. Why is that? Yeah, that's done on a separate layer. There we go. Okay, it's that layer. Let's see. I should see which and see some more pages. Let's see. Should be that color wall. So, yeah. Will we see mass sales on... I don't know why I hit that one. Mass sales of Assassin's Creed Shadows? Probably not. While there are people that will buy into it, I don't know why I've got that layer active. Okay. While there will be people that buy it that are and love the Assassin's Creed, and good on them. Buy what you want to buy. Considering there is a boycott by an entire nation of people that is prominent in the video game industry, so it's not like we're talking about some small country. Japan is very prominent in the video game culture. And that we have a company that's basically thumbing their nose at the culture. That also has pissed off a bunch of fans here in the US. Pissed off a bunch of people that are like, no, I'm not buying this piece of crap. I, of course, did not want to touch upon the woke. That's for another day and age to talk about. There are far more games that have gotten destroyed because of the woke concepts. And it's not going to be unheard of here. And it really isn't. I think it's that color. I'll double check it later. But yeah, if we look at games that are kind of bending the knee like this, because I think this is another Sweet Baby Inc. game. I could be wrong, but pretty much everything that Sweet Baby Inc. has touched, and this is just going slightly on the woke end of things. Anything they touch seems to be poison. You had Dragon Age a few months ago that had theirs. You had Concord. Nobody wanted to play the game. And basically both of those games are now having to be free for anybody to play them. At all. Then you have even worse where they do that and then they just make a completely crap game, like with the license of the Suicide Squad. Yeah, when you combine all of those and prove that these games do not sell, that they have a horrible reputation, but you're going to put a bigger name title game franchise such as Assassin's Creed into it, then yeah, it'll be interesting to see if the loyalists versus the people who are upset will what the numbers will be. So it's going to be interesting to see as it comes out the next few weeks. What I can say is, if you see the reviews out there and they're like, oh, well, we get all these praises, a lot of companies pay for reviews, and a lot of reviews are made to be friendly to companies because they may get something out of it. So the actual reviews that matter are more fan-based reviews, and there are no fan-based reviews currently as of yet. I think a lot of those won't be coming out until the 20th, and we'll hear a lot more of this come Thursday, come Friday, and we might talk about it a little bit on Thursday and Friday, depending on what I see. But that being said, we have reached the end of night. I didn't get much art done, but I did get, we did cover a lot in this subject today, and we needed to go through a lot of stuff, and I need to do some things that, wrong layer. We'll cover a bit of other things as it comes. I kind of did this on the fly. This was a what can I pull together today, and then I noticed Ubisoft releases the game on Thursday, so I was like, well, let's hit it now, and we'll talk about it now before the game comes out. So that's why we chose this. We, if you caught a few of the other streams, we were debating what we were going to do this week. I promise we will get to the CIA one, and we now have a request for the aliens, to cover some alien stuff. The only reason I didn't want to do the aliens today is I did not have enough time to research for this. So I want to give it more time to actually research what actually has been released and what we can actually talk about. So we'll do that on another stream. But as always, this is my opinion. And I allow everybody to come in and join in with their opinions, either live with us, which we didn't really have today, or, leave it in the comments. I will not delete a comment. I have not deleted comments from any site that I've worked on, except for spam comments, or not like actual spam, like the one message we got today that's sitting in the chat. That's a spam comment. It's just trying to sell something stupid. So yeah, those are the only comments I delete. Everybody else, you're free to make your opinions and argue. I even gave a proof the other night when I showed a comment that dropped on one of my latest comics that was crass and ugly. But we will leave it at that. So leave your if you have an opinion on this subject, if you want to tell me I'm wrong, if you want to come here and gloat after the game comes out, and if it makes a lot of money, I don't think it will, because a lot of people are like, this is just trash. Then that's up to you. That's really up to you. I welcome it. Go ahead. Interactions always welcome. If you have something you want us to talk about, since we have the conversation with aliens, that is definitely on the list. Yeah, bring it about. It helps us create content here. It helps us build up. Give in mind, it does take a little time to do the research of things. This one was a little easier because I already know a good deal about Japanese history because I've studied it. And it's important to note, where the arguments are. But as always, go out there and be the best you can be. That doesn't mean, you have to be a great person and do all amazing things. It just means do what you have to make yourself be better than you were when you woke up. Just don't be negative, don't be cruel, and that kind of stuff. The world, there's so much negativity in this world, and a lot of it is just stupid negativity, really stupid. But we will see you all later. We will be back on Thursday with a new Dining and Doodles, special Dining and Doodles release. Normally we don't air on Thursday, and then we will be back on Friday with Chrono Trigger. So I'll see you all then. Until then, have a wonderful evening, a wonderful week, and a wonderful year. Good night, everybody.
Lights go down streams and thanks for time we spend. Laughs and smiles all through night. With you, it feels just right. Signing off. Don't forget like, comment, song. Signing off. Ring the bell and show some love. Good vibes shared, a fun ride. With you, I'm filled with pride.